Most men don't realize it, but there is one fear almost every woman carries deep inside her. A fear she rarely talks about. A fear she tries to hide behind confidence, independence, or a strong personality. And the surprising part is that this fear has nothing to do with danger, or loneliness, or heartbreak. It's something far more emotional, far more human, and far more connected to how she sees herself. If you understand this fear, truly understand it, you will understand women in a way most men never will. Because once you recognize it, you start seeing it everywhere, in the way she tests you, in the way she reacts, in the way she protects herself, and even in the way she loves. So stay with me, because this one truth will open your eyes to the real psychology behind modern women. A lot of men, especially men over 40, 50, and 60, have spent their lives being told that women are mysterious, complicated, or impossible to understand. But the reality is that women are not difficult. They are simply emotional creatures shaped by experiences that men don't always see. Women respond to connection differently. They respond to stability differently. And most importantly, they respond to fear differently. So before we talk about the fear itself, we have to understand why it exists. Let me take you into a real example. A man named David in his early 60s once shared a moment with me. He said, "I don't understand. She says she wants love, but every time I get close, she pulls away. Then she blames me for not trying harder. What is this?" This confusion is extremely common. Many men interpret this behavior as mixed signals. In reality, it is a woman wrestling with the fear I'm about to explain. David wasn't dealing with rejection. He was dealing with a woman terrified of something she couldn't say out loud. Women fear emotional exposure far more than physical danger. They fear being unseen, misunderstood, or emotionally abandoned. But there is a deeper layer beneath these words, one that psychologists like Brené Brown, Esther Perel, and Dr. Harriet Lerner discuss often. It is the fear of being not enough. Not pretty enough, not young enough, not lovable enough, not worthy enough. And this is the fear women will do almost anything to hide. Most men underestimate how deeply this fear shapes a woman's behavior. Women hide it by pretending they don't care. They hide it by acting strong and independent. They hide it by withholding emotions or pushing men away. They hide it by expecting perfection from men, because the higher she raises the bar on you, the less she has to face what she truly feels about herself. But beneath all of it, the fear remains, the fear of not being enough for the man she wants. This fear shows up in subtle ways. When she gets jealous easily, it is not about controlling you. It is about insecurity. When she tests you, it is not because she enjoys drama. It is because she needs reassurance without having to ask for it. When she pulls back, it is not to punish you. It is because closeness triggers vulnerability. And vulnerability is where her deepest fear lives. Women know that when they truly open up, when they let their guard down, when they let a man in emotionally, that is when they can be hurt the most. Not physically, emotionally. And emotional pain for a woman cuts far deeper and lasts far longer than any physical wound. Psychologists call this attachment fear, but in simple terms, it is the fear of losing herself in love and being abandoned afterward. It's the fear of giving everything and receiving nothing. The fear of loving more than she is loved. The fear of investing her emotions in a man who may not understand or appreciate them. And this fear is especially powerful in women over 40, 50, and 60, who have lived long enough to experience real heartbreak, betrayal, or emotional disappointment. Younger women fear being rejected. Older women fear being replaced. This is why women test men. It's why they push men emotionally. It's why they sometimes create distance when everything seems to be going well. She is not trying to ruin the relationship. She's trying to protect her heart. And many men misinterpret this protection as manipulation or confusion. But once you see her behavior through the lens of fear rather than attitude, everything changes. You stop taking it personally. You start understanding her, instead of reacting to her. Let me tell you something most men don't realize. A woman will often hide her fear by acting like she doesn't need you. She will act self-sufficient, independent, emotionally detached, even uninterested. But this is a shield. Independence is not a rejection of men, it is a defense mechanism. Women over 50 especially wear independence like armor, because life has shown them that relying too much on someone can be dangerous. Not physically, emotionally. They are afraid of giving a man the power to hurt them, so they pretend they don't need help, support, or emotional closeness. But inside, they desperately want a connection strong enough to help them feel safe again. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood aspects of female psychology. Women do not fall in love with men who chase them. They fall in love with men who make them feel emotionally safe. Emotional safety means she can be vulnerable without feeling judged. It means she can express fear without feeling weak. It means she can rely on you without losing herself. It means she can reveal who she really is, flaws and all, without worrying that you will walk away. But the thing is, most men don't know how to create emotional safety, because men experience fear differently. Men fear failure. Women fear abandonment. Fear losing respect. Women fear losing emotional connection. Men fear being controlled. Women fear being hurt emotionally in ways they can't recover from. When these fears collide, relationships break down. When these fears are understood, relationships heal. One of the biggest misunderstandings in relationships is that women fear loneliness. But that is not the real fear. Women fear being with the wrong man far more than being alone. A woman will gladly choose solitude over emotional disappointment. She would rather have peace than emotional uncertainty. She would rather be alone than risk being emotionally unseen. Men misunderstand this and think women are rejecting companionship. But the truth is they are rejecting emotional danger. And here's the powerful part. A woman's fear is not triggered by your flaws. It is triggered by unpredictability. Women can handle almost any man's imperfections as long as they feel emotionally secure with him. They can handle mistakes, disagreements, personality differences, even arguments. But they cannot handle uncertainty. If she doesn't know how you feel, she fills in the blanks with her fear. If she doesn't know where the relationship stands, she assumes the worst. If you pull away emotionally, even slightly, she feels the fear of not enough instantly. That fear is ancient. It comes from childhood experiences, past relationships, societal expectations, and internal beliefs. It is not her fault, but when a man understands this fear, he becomes far more patient, far more confident, and far more capable of leading the relationship in a healthy direction. Now let's talk about something very important, the way women mask this fear. Have you ever seen a woman become defensive over something small, or overreact to something simple, or become cold when she should be warm, or push you away when she clearly wants you close? These are not signs of rejection, these are signs of fear. A woman who truly doesn't care about you will be indifferent, not emotional. Emotional reactions come from emotional investment, and emotional investment comes from vulnerability. So when she reacts emotionally, it's actually a sign that you matter more than she's willing to admit. Men often mistake a woman's fear for anger, confusion, or disrespect, but it is none of those. It is a deep emotional wound that gets triggered when she feels unsafe, not physically, emotionally. And emotional safety is what allows her to relax into love. A woman cannot open her heart until she feels she won't lose herself in the process. Now, before we continue into the heart of this truth, into the part that explains exactly what women fear most and how men can use this understanding to build deeper connection, we need to explore one more key insight. A woman's fear does not make her weak. It makes her human. It makes her protective, makes her careful, and in many ways it makes her wiser. Women feel deeply, and that depth is not something to fear, it is something to respect. Before we continue, take a moment to notice something important. When people talk about women's fears, they often describe them as unreasonable, dramatic, or exaggerated. But the truth is, when you understand the emotional wiring behind these fears, you begin to see how deeply human they are. You begin to realize that these fears aren't about weakness. They are about survival, belonging, and emotional security. And when a man learns to recognize them, not judge them, something powerful happens. The tension dissolves, the misunderstandings clear, and a woman begins to trust in ways she didn't even know she could. But here's where most men get it wrong. They think reassurance is the same thing as solving the problem. They believe if they give enough logic, enough facts, or enough reminders, her fear will disappear. But emotional fear doesn't respond to logic. It responds to presence. This is something even therapists like Esther Perel and John Gottman often emphasize. Women process fear through connection, not information. So when a man simply stays with her emotionally, instead of trying to fix or silence her fear, something inside her calms. She feels, for once, not alone in her mind. And when a woman doesn't feel alone in her fears, that's when she finally opens up. But here's where the big shift happens. Because many men believe that this emotional presence requires them to sacrifice their dignity or soften their backbone. It doesn't. In fact, it's the opposite. Women respect men who remain grounded, stable, and emotionally consistent. They don't want a man who becomes shaky when she becomes emotional. They don't want a man who loses his strength when she loses her calm. They want a man whose steadiness feels like a safety anchor. That is what creates respect. That is what creates trust. That is what makes her fear weaken naturally over time. Not because you fixed it, but because you didn't collapse under it. And now let's go deeper into the fear almost no woman will ever confess clearly. The fear of loving a man more than he loves her. This fear forces many women to hold back emotionally, even when they want to give more. It can cause them to pull away, to act distant, to become cold, to test, or even to criticize the man they actually care about. Many men see this as rejection or disrespect when really it is one thing, fear disguising itself as protection. Women fear losing emotional control because losing control means being hurt. They fear giving more because giving more means risking more. This is why some women seem to act warmer when they feel slightly unsure about a man and colder when they feel deeply attached. It is backwards, but emotionally it makes sense. The closer she feels to you, the more she fears losing you. And the more she fears losing you, the more she hides her vulnerability. But here is what most men never realize. When a woman hides her vulnerability, she isn't trying to punish you. She is trying to protect herself. And the moment she senses that you understand her, not agree, not fix, but understand, her walls begin to soften. She begins to relax. She begins to trust that loving you won't leave her empty-handed or emotionally abandoned. This is why emotional consistency is so powerful for men to master. When a woman sees that you don't change your tone, your identity, your emotional temperature based on her mood, she feels secure. It tells her, he's not going anywhere, he's steady. I don't have to protect myself from him. Let's move into another fear women don't talk about, the fear that men will judge their emotions. Women worry that their emotional waves will make a man think they're too much, too dramatic, or too complicated. So they hide the parts of themselves that feel imperfect. They shrink their emotional truth, so they won't be seen as a burden. And the sad irony is this: the more they hide, the more distant they become. The more distant they become, the more disconnected the relationship feels. And the more disconnected the relationship feels, the more fearful they become that the man they love will eventually walk away. This creates a cycle where fear creates emotional distance. Emotional distance creates more fear, and the relationship slowly weakens. But this cycle can be broken easily when a man shows emotional acceptance. Not agreement, acceptance. A man doesn't need to understand every emotional detail. He just needs to let her feel without making her feel wrong. And here's another truth. Women don't admit easily. They fear being unloved even when they're doing their best. Women fear giving everything: loyalty, support, affection, energy, companionship, and still not being enough. This fear comes from childhood experiences, past relationships, and society constantly shifting expectations. Women feel pressure to be independent but still feminine, strong but still soft, confident but still humble, successful but not intimidating. They are constantly being pulled in opposite directions. So when a man understands this complexity, instead of labeling her as confusing, she feels seen. And when a woman feels seen, she gives more, she trusts more, and she loves deeper. Now let's explore one of the most sensitive fears women carry, the fear of aging out of desirability. Even the most secure woman feels this silently. Society tells women that their value is tied to youth and beauty. That creates a quiet fear humming beneath every choice, every comparison, and every passing year. They fear becoming invisible. They fear not being looked at. They fear not being chosen. When a man continues to show interest, affection, attention, and desire, even as the years pass, he gives her security no other compliment can match. She doesn't need poetic love letters. She doesn't need big gestures. She just needs to know she is still seen, still wanted, still valued. This is the emotional oxygen that keeps long-term relationships alive. Another hidden fear many women refuse to voice is the fear of being emotionally abandoned during conflict. Women don't fear disagreement, they fear disconnection. A man withdrawing emotionally, shutting down, or becoming silent is more frightening to a woman than the argument itself. This comes from the psychology of attachment. Women bond through emotional exchange, while men often withdraw to problem solve. She reads silence as distance. He sees silence as calm. Two different worlds. But when a man learns to stay emotionally available, not arguing, not escalating, but simply staying present, she no longer fears losing him in the middle of conflict. And when that fear disappears, the arguments become shorter, softer, and far less painful for both sides. Now let's uncover another truth. Women fear that men won't take their emotional experiences seriously. When a woman shares something painful, she doesn't want solutions, she wants validation. She wants the man to acknowledge that her emotions matter, not because they are logical, but because they are real. When a man learns the skill of emotional validation, something psychologists call attunement, he becomes a safe place. He becomes the person she can come to with her fears, her dreams, her insecurities, and her deepest truths. And when a man becomes her safe place, she becomes his biggest supporter. Now we approach one of the deepest fears. The fear of losing herself in a relationship. Women worry that giving too much will drain their identity. They fear becoming someone's caretaker, someone's emotional crutch, someone's background character instead of a woman with her own goals, dreams, and passions. When a man supports her individuality, encourages her personal growth, and respects her boundaries, he gives her freedom. And when a woman feels free in a relationship, she becomes more loving, more connected, and more emotionally open. Finally, here is the fear women almost never admit, because admitting it feels too vulnerable, too raw, too personal. Women fear choosing the wrong man, not just wrong for them, but wrong for their future, wrong for their emotional safety, wrong for their sense of identity and belonging. They fear giving their heart to someone who won't protect it. They fear building a life with someone who won't honor it. They fear loving someone who won't fight for the relationship when things get hard. This fear is why many women move slowly, test for consistency, or hesitate to fully trust. It's not rejection. It's caution. It's self-preservation. And when a man understands this, instead of feeling insulted, he becomes patient. He becomes steady. And that steadiness is what convinces her that she made the right choice. So now we return to the central truth of this entire message. Women won't admit these fears easily. But every man needs to know them, because understanding them changes everything. It changes how you respond, how you communicate, how you lead emotionally, how you build connection, and ultimately, how you create a relationship that feels safe, loving, and lasting. Because when a man understands a woman's fear, he gains the key to her trust. And when he gains her trust, he gains something far greater, her loyalty, her softness, her warmth, and the deepest part of her heart.